Genius.
On July 15th, 2020, the Twitter accounts of several high-profile individuals were taken over.
And this 17-year-old shut down Twitter, hacked Twitter, and got onto the accounts of some of the most famous people on the planet.
Now,
At 2:17 a.m., the glow of a computer screen lit up a bedroom in Tampa, Florida. The blinds were drawn tight, the rest of the house silent. But inside that room, a teenager was prying open the back door of one of the world's most powerful platforms. His fingers moved fast, lines of code spilling across the screen like he'd done this 100 times before. And in a way, he had. For him, the internet was a playground, a battlefield, and tonight, his stage. 17 years old, no driver's license, no college acceptance letters, just a cracked iPhone, a half-finished can of Mountain Dew, and the audacity to go where no teenager had ever gone before, straight into Twitter's central nervous system. Most hacks happen in silence, buried deep in code that no ordinary person ever sees. But what he was about to do would erupt across the globe in real time. Presidents, billionaires, global icons, their accounts weren't just vulnerable, they were already his. It didn't start tonight. It began months earlier, in chat rooms most people never knew existed. Discord servers filled with aliases, usernames like Smoke and Mirrors, where kids too young to drink traded stolen identities like baseball cards. In these corners of the web, hierarchy wasn't built on age or status. It was built on what you could steal, what you could break, what you could sell. And in those spaces, he was a rising star. They called him Kirk, a name chosen not because it meant anything, but because it sounded sharp, quick, forgettable. The perfect mask. Kirk had a skill set far beyond his years. Social engineering, the art of manipulating people, not machines. He didn't brute force firewalls or spend days cracking encryption keys. He called people. He tricked them. And when employees of Twitter picked up the phone, they had no idea the voice on the other end was a kid in his bedroom, hunched over a desk that still had high school homework scattered across it. By the time the sun rose that July morning, he had infiltrated internal systems designed to be impenetrable. He had admin access. Bitcoin addresses flashed across feeds, and money poured in. Within hours, over $100,000 had been sent to wallets controlled by one teenager in Florida. And the whole world was watching it happen. The FBI, Twitter's internal security team, cybersecurity firms across the country, everyone scrambled. Was this a foreign attack? A state-sponsored cyber operation? Or something worse? But inside that bedroom, it was just a teenager, barely old enough to vote, listening to the buzz of notifications and watching numbers climb. He had just pulled off one of the boldest hacks in history, and he was smiling. By 3:45 p.m., the Twitter headquarters in San Francisco was on fire. Not literally, but in the only way that mattered. Laptops pinged, Slack channels exploded, executives barked into Zoom calls, and yet no one had an answer. How could the accounts of the most powerful people on Earth be hijacked all at once? They pulled cables, froze permissions, locked out employees. But the tweets kept coming. Every 30 seconds, another blue checkmark, another verified giant was compromised. Joe Biden, Uber, Warren Buffett, each account tweeting the same promise: double your money, send Bitcoin. By 4 p.m., panic wasn't just in the offices of Twitter, it was everywhere. CNBC cut into programming. CNN anchors stared wide-eyed at screens, repeating the words, "We have not seen anything like this before." For ordinary users, Twitter had become a carnival of chaos. For hackers in underground forums, it was art. And for Kirk, it was a game. He wasn't alone, not really. He was working with others, older, sharper, more cautious. Some he knew from Discord, others from shady corners of OG users, a forum notorious for stolen accounts. They were brokers of clout, traders of digital gold. And tonight, with Kirk holding the keys to the kingdom, everyone wanted a piece. At 4:19 p.m., while the world stared at Bitcoin scams on famous feeds, another, quieter scheme was unfolding. Private deals, brokered in whispers, accounts sold for thousands apiece. 3-letter Twitter handles, vanity usernames like @Dark or @King. Digital real estate more valuable than most people realized. And with Kirk inside, he could deliver them instantly. Money poured in through two streams: the public scam, visible to millions, and the secret sales, known only to a handful of insiders. In a matter of hours, nearly $180,000 was his. To a 17-year-old, it was a fortune. To the FBI, it was blood in the water. By 5:32 p.m., Twitter made the desperate call to shut down all verified accounts. For 2 hours, the most recognizable names on the platform were silent. Meanwhile, federal agents moved fast. Blockchain analysts traced Bitcoin transactions across wallets like footprints in the snow. Cyber investigators followed usernames, Discord handles, IP addresses. One by one, the puzzle pieces aligned. And at the center of the storm was a boy whose real name was Graham Ivan Clark. To his classmates, Graham was quiet, maybe a little odd. To neighbors, he was polite, unremarkable. But online, he was Kirk, sharp, ruthless, untouchable. Two lives running in parallel, about to collide in the most spectacular way. On the night of July 16th, just 24 hours after the hack, Graham sat at his desk again, scrolling through headlines that screamed his crime to the world. He could feel it, the noose tightening. Every refresh brought a new article, every notification another clue that his window of freedom was closing. Still, he logged in. Still, he chatted. Still, he believed he could outwit the world. But somewhere out there, in a federal office filled with glowing monitors and exhausted agents, his face was already on a board, his name circled in red, and the countdown to his downfall had begun.
At 6:43 a.m., July 31st, 2020, the quiet streets of a Tampa suburb were broken by the screech of tires. Black SUVs rolled in, doors swinging open in perfect rhythm. Agents in FBI jackets flooded the cul-de-sac. Neighbors peeked through blinds, confused. To them, this was just another sleepy Florida morning. To the agents, it was the end of a manhunt. Inside the house, Graham Ivan Clark was still asleep. The room was cluttered. Clothes on the floor, empty cans on the desk, a poster peeling from the wall. His computer sat silent, but the glow of the modem light still blinked steadily like a heartbeat waiting to be cut off. The door burst open. Shouts filled the air. He woke to flashlights, red dots dancing across the walls. Hands where we can see them. In seconds, the boy who once controlled the accounts of presidents and billionaires was on the floor, wrists bound in cold steel. The agents moved fast, seizing hard drives, phones, notes scribbled on paper. Anything could be evidence, and everything was. As Graham sat cuffed on the edge of his bed, the realization finally sank in. The empire he'd built in secret, the audacity that made him untouchable, had evaporated in a single morning raid. By noon, his face was everywhere. The teenager who hacked Twitter, the prodigy who outsmarted Silicon Valley, mugshots plastered across screens, news anchors repeating the same phrase 17 years old. To the world, it was unbelievable. To law enforcement, it was a statement no one, not even a kid, was beyond reach. The charges stacked high, 30 counts of fraud, identity theft, hacking, conspiracy. Each one carried years, decades behind bars. Prosecutors painted him as a criminal mastermind, reckless and greedy. His lawyers, scrambling, reminded the court he was just a teenager. Courtrooms are not built for suspense, but this one felt cinematic. The boy walked in, shackled, his hair unkempt, his eyes darting. Judges stared down from the bench, lawyers shuffled papers, the weight of the world pressing onto the shoulders of someone who still should have been worrying about college applications, not federal indictments. The plea deal came swift. In March 2021, Graham Clark stood before the court one final time. He admitted guilt. 3 years in a juvenile facility, followed by probation. A sentence softened by his age, but sharpened by its symbolism. The system had caught its teenage outlaw. But the real punishment wasn't the time. It was the silence that followed. The internet that once amplified his power now erased him. Forums scrubbed his name. Discord chats whispered about betrayal. And the community he once ruled moved on. In a space where reputation was currency, Graham was bankrupt. Outside the courthouse, the Florida sun blazed, the cameras rolled, and questions hung heavy in the air. How had one teenager outsmarted a $30 billion company? How had Twitter fallen so fast, so hard, to a voice on the phone and a boy with a laptop? And what did it mean for the rest of us, that the systems we trust can collapse in minutes, at the hands of someone not old enough to vote? Back in his bedroom, the posters were gone, the desk empty. The glow of the modem was dark. But the legend of that night in July, the night Twitter fell, still lingers in every corner of the internet. Because somewhere, In the flicker of a screen at 2:17 a.m., a teenager once reached through the wires and grabbed the world by the throat. And for a few unforgettable hours, he owned it.